You got more dry bricks like that?
A few more. Some more of those.
A key.
استنى من فوق.
No?
No,
I can't get to it. I was over there and I couldn't.
Don't get too much in
Claude, this afternoon it's your turn. You see, I switched sides, you know, I couldn't take all day.
It costs $80 to get one clean.
More than that.
I don't know how. It really took me apart.
يلا اديني.
Ça va.
اهم حاجه عندي قبل الصوت.
قبل العلم.
ها؟ الحين قبل شوف. هو هو. You are.
Oh, sí. Horas y horas.
Second. 1 minute.
هو قال ما حملش
They're in my truck on the right-hand side behind the seat. Alhamdulillah.
Oh, it's getting Gatos y adobe juntos, un terbe de adobe. Técnicas que pueden usar nuestra gente aquí, ayudar a los pobres, que para mí será...
Fini?
No, not yet. I still haven't gotten one place. So you can take it to work, watch, just to get close. I need to see the whole process. Another thing.
You can do the whole process.
Yeah.
You could do these on the ground all day long.
Yeah.
You find out everything you needed to know. You don't have to do the whole room.
I was thinking the thing.
انت قلت وين في الغداء؟
I've always thought.
والله ما حد يسأل زعلي.
لكن برضه صح كلامك
لا ولا لا.
انت حقك علي.
all the way from the bottom.
ايوه 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 انت
week you have to do 12 tons up 12 feet all by yourself.
هو ده هيبين هو المبذور
Today is worse than mine. Last shovel. You're right. Yeah. That's it, bro. Unless we got another barrel full.
Here. Here.
This is it. That's my mistake.
That makes you to feel the humor of the artisan, of the craftsman when he was building, and as if you are meeting with him. But if you have mechanical perfection, you don't meet man. You are meeting perfection and mechanism when you are not interested. I say, if you have, you know, the ceramic, not the ceramics, the porcelain of Sèvres in France, very perfect. If it is just scratched, it is to be thrown away into the garbage. But a broken piece of pottery that made by hand from the Indian, remains or any other folk architecture, folk art, is a piece of museum because it has the touch of the brush and the feeling of man and his humor. So these are the two domains that we have to differentiate one from the other. So we have had here two attitudes now towards architectural design with respect of climatology. You have the Apollonian and the Dionysian. The Dionysian is all these tricks that you have in the remains. What's the name of this Indian settlement round which we are going to visit? Bipon with Taos. This is Dionysian, and in which man was reacting directly with nature, and the arrangement of the houses and in height, and it is exactly like what we were saying about the movement of the sun. You have the angle of declination and the angle of altitude for the height and for the angle, the horizontal. It is as if it were a diagram of the movement of the sun. So the man has been reacting directly with Mother Earth and, I don't know, Father Sun. No, the sun is feminine and the moon is masculine. And the earth is what? Is feminine. Neutral. So you see, the knowledge coming from the experience of man and interaction between man and nature produced a certain knowledge and a certain solutions that would look more organic. But when we step into the field, when Apollo comes, the university graduate, and the professor of, I don't know, physics and so on, then you would have mechanical solutions, which unfortunately Dionysus.
Don't criticize too much on mechanical because I am mechanical.
No, that's not the mechanical engineer, my dear. This, you are welcome. You are, I say that when we apply mechanics in art, you are not, you are on the contrary.
I'm just
And
laughing.
this, you see, and then you have the solutions, and they treat the house as if it were a test tube, and man as if he were some chemical substance, and they forget about this human touch, this human humor, this deviation from perfection. If you go for perfection, then you lose the human quality. Perfection is a finality, but you have to reach. You have to be imperfect to have interest in life. But if you reach perfection, so fini, what do you want? I have achieved the aim, ultimate aim of my existence. This will come when humanity will have developed completely, and then we shall have the ultimate aim of life on earth would have been achieved, and then we can go away and finito. But as far as there is something to achieve, which is the raison d'etre for the evolution, why we are in life and we are evolving, continuously evolving, what are we trying to do? We have to think about these things.
This is more philosophical than architectural, isn't it?
Architecture without philosophy would become engineering. Architecture without aesthetics becomes engineering. And we have to, to say, as I said, when man was reacting directly with the environment, and he produced, what is it, in Ottawa? The place, Ottawa?
Taos.
Taos.
T-A-O-S.
Taos. There's every line, every, form comes from man receiving from outside, from the universe, from the sky, the sun, the moon, the wind, and his reaction, his bodily reaction, and his heart, and his brain, and all this knowledge transferred, or rather reacted on his fingers, shaping the brick, shaping the mud, sculpture. And then what you see, he would be radiating from his body into the matter, the material, into the form. And once this form is created, it will re-radiate the same feelings. And that's why, we have a monastery, some monasteries in the desert in Egypt. And I have met one of the monks. He made his own cell by his own hands, very simple, like adobe out here, but modeled and radiating spirituality. And later on I visited the same monastery, and I found they have put for them 10 rooms, 10 cells of concrete. And I was horrified. I went to the bishop. I told him, my father, what have you done to your monks? These rooms are rooms for servants in a third-class hotel in Cairo. And you treat, where is the spirituality? He said, you are right, but it is because the architect of the patriarchate in Cairo is a university graduate. So instead, and this is where we are ruining. I'm not against universities, but still I heard out here that the University of Santa Fe, they don't have soil mechanics and adobe. They don't teach adobe. How come?
I can't even get a license because the Construction Industries Commission doesn't have a license for the work that we do. It's not legal.
They don't have a license for adobe.
No,
It's not legal.
Legal.
it is not recognized that we practice this profession, which is 300 years older than the Construction Industries Commission.
Yes, this reminds me of Le Corbusier. When he said that in nature is not perfect because it doesn't make the cylinder and the sphere, the geometrical form, which the municipality fellow gives the permit for. So I wish if we did shave, cut out his head and make it into a sphere, with no features, and his arms to be cylindrical, and we can have not even, I don't know, this is terrible. The saying that says the straight is the line of duty and the curve is the line of beauty. Here you have to have, this is the sophisticated boy of a primary school, second year primary school, when he gets, acquainted with the cylinder and the pyramid and geometry. This is horrible, because this is the most rudimentary thing that you can think of. It is not even the cell. A man reduces himself to lower than the cell, not the insect. The insect has got form and composition, and I don't know if it were an ant or if it were, I don't know. You see, this is the mistake with modern, ideas and the facility that you can have. And man is not brainwashed, how do you say the expression, is not astonished, he is bewildered by the first knowledge until he knows more, and then he would come back on his decisions. Because when you have half education, they become atheists. And then when they learn more, you will find people, sages and scientists, they believe back, you come back to faith. Even this man, Leconte de Nuit, he is a biologist. He proved the existence of God by mathematics. He said that if you have the molecule of protein, it's reduce the contents of it to 11 elements. It is more than 11. It would need, if the creation were left to hazard, according to the laws of hazard, the probability, it would need to have 2 molecules of protein, the same one with zeros from here to there, 1,000,000 times the life of the Earth. So there must be something transcending matter. And the scientists, I don't know if it were, I don't remember the names now, Heisenberg or the other one, one of these nuclear physics people, he also said that if the knowledge didn't exist before in man himself, he wouldn't have found it. We are trying to find ourselves on the outside world. We are not finding, if you have it. And that's why, in art, it is a gift, as we say.
In this point, Dr. Hassan,
yes.
I want to remind that in the Quran there is a verse that says, those who love God the most are the learned.
You are quite right. Because if you come to discover his laws, it is a kind of worship. It is worshipping God in discovering his laws, not by praying or doing this movement or this other, sign. It is by penetrating into his, the immutable laws of his creation. Because we say that beauty, you have beauty when the form conciliates the forces that are acting on it. And this you can have in nature. You look at where we are, look at the natural forms. There is not one single thing, from the blade of grass, the grain of sand, to the hill, to the clouds, which is ugly. The harmony that is there. And also how they conciliate the forces. When I am driving out here and I see the configuration of the mountain and the most fantastic figures as it were sculptured, it is because, first of all, you have the formation, the geological formation of the mountain. And then you have the natural forces acting on it, erosion. If it were by the wind, or if it were by the rain, or even if it were to have an earthquake and shake it all and make it to fall, the way it falls would follow the geological formation of the mountain. and it would be the form would be conciliating these forces, as we said. When I'm flying, I'm very amused by the clouds, because if you take the laws of aerodynamics influencing the air movement and in above, apart from we have bumps, because this is not very nice and in your plane, but when you have the aerodynamics, the movement of the air giving shape to the clouds, changing every minute, every second, and always beautiful, because the form cannot be but conciliating the forces of the aerodynamic forces working on it. And we would like our architecture to be something like the clouds, man manipulating space, only in a very rudimentary way, with the straight line and the cube and the cylinder a la Le Corbusier, but not, I mean to say, so roughly and bluntly, I mean, have cylinders and I don't know what. Organic matter always is never, you have, except I think in crystals you have the geometrical form very strict, although I don't think that it is below a certain, I mean, when you come to these cells that compose the crystal, you will have the imperfection. Because they say the cells in man, I don't know how many billion cells we have in our body, and there are no two cells alike. Corbu would like to have them all alike, then we could have become cylindrical. And a man, a cylindrical man, my goodness, that would be fantastic. But our modern architecture is like a cylindrical man, because we put a glass wall, and then you have to have, you know, that glass is transparent to the ultraviolet. In the hot countries I'm talking. Here, if you have it, never mind, because you want the heat. But in the hot countries, once exposed to the sun, it needs, if you have 3 meters by 3 meters, once exposed to the sun, it will have, penetrate 2,000 kilocalories per hour. Kabani Bey told me right now that he is using, this would need 2 tons of refrigeration per hour. In his house in Jeddah, he is using 10 tons of refrigeration per hour, because the house is not fitting. While the old houses in Jeddah, if you examine by the thermometer, by the hygrometer, by the thermal, I don't know, I mean to say the instruments, the modern instruments, you will find that it doesn't need all this heat, I mean all this refrigeration. It reminds me of a story was told to me by the director of the Building Research Center in Cairo. The architect built the center with glass walls to the east and west. And the heat was so tremendous. The director used to tell me he used to sit in the corridor because he couldn't stand it in the wall in spite of the air conditioning machine, little machine. And he told me a story amusing. He said that there was a man who put in front of his doorway in the street a big piece of, a huge piece of stone, I mean a rock. And in the evening, at night, he put a lamp on it. And they asked, why do you put the lamp on the stone, mister? He said, because for people not to tumble over it. But why put it at all? So we are putting stones to tumble over, and we're putting lamps. And that is why when the oil is out, the lamp is out, it doesn't have oil, out of oil, we're in the dial for energy, and you have the crisis of oil, which is becoming so amusing with the trouble, the repetition, and you are going for nuclear energy and for solar energy and for wind energy. And it is fantastic, man, when he depended on something which wasn't correct because he wasn't having his houses fitting with the environment like the Irid Indians. So you see, any expenditure which goes beyond what you can do on your own would not be correct and is immoral. If I add 1 calorie to my house, which I can avoid, as an architect, this would be immoral on my part, to have people design houses and make people to suffer. But The only way is to treat them as pebbles and have them in test tubes and have them in cylinders. You know, in Paris, they have what they call Beaubourg. It is an exhibition place, and using the last findings of mechanics, and you put people in tubes, actually. I'm not joking, but they put one in a test tube, and he's run by sliding tapes. I went in and I ran out horrified. I cannot be treated like that, you know. I have to be received by the, the people and the culture that is in the museum, like we have seen. You weren't with us when we have been to the museum here. They are preparing for the Red Indian art, the historical. And you would be received, every article is greeting you because you feel the person who did it. But put me in a glass thing like in the airport of what do you call it, in Paris.
Charles de Gaulle.
Charles de Gaulle. Yeah. And you are treated in the most fantastic manner. This could have been for children, I don't know, even it would be ruinous for children. Because children has to play, you know, have to do something with their own, not to be shifted about, you know, like that. So this is where we are, and I don't know, and anyway, here, thanks to God that you have still, man is still reacting with Mother Earth and with nature, but I wish if the University of Santa Fe, if the professors could claim and go for the House of Parliament, the White House, is it they call it? The White House, and raise the problem and remove the regulations prohibiting adobe from being respected. Because, you know, my joke always, I say that God created Adam, man, out of clay, mud, and asked all the angels to prosternate, to bow down to Adam. They all did, except Satan. Why? Because he wanted God to create Adam out of reinforced concrete so as to have cement factories and sell, I don't know, steel, I don't know, and have contractors. But if God would have created Adam out of concrete, Eve couldn't have come out of his rib because it would be too hard, and he would be alone now, crumbling down a piece of lump of what do you call it, of concrete falling down, you know. So this is what we are doing with we are in flesh, and we are not in just chemical substance that you can put in a test tube and add acids and it becomes red and I don't know. No, monsieur. We have to come back on our decisions and feel. You know, when we talk about the environment, we think of the environment in terms of the landscape, the hill, the sand, the river, the stream, the fauna, the flora, and the birds too, and everything. And but also we have to think about the atmosphere with the humidity, which is containing all the humidity for life. Because if there weren't humidity in the atmosphere, there would have been no life on Earth. It is water dripping from top that is creating all the plant life and feeding animal life and human life. And that's why the pharaohs, they had the goddess of sky, the cow Hathor, because the cow, you can milk, give you milk and the sky is like milk giving life to Earth. So, but we have more than that, we have radiations coming from the cosmos, from the outside of the universe, and radiations coming from below, from the ground, from the earth, which they call telluric radiations, which some would be beneficial, some would be bad, and according to the configuration of the ground, the earth. And you have in Lourdes, in France, is healing. People go and are cured by just vibrating in unison with this telluric radiations coming out from the ground, you know. If you put cement and steel, it would stop these radiations from reaching you. And they have found out that the best material you can surround yourself with is wood, because it doesn't stop this cosmic, because we have also cosmic radiations coming from above and coming from below. So the wood doesn't stop it, because man and wood were created in the very beginning on the surface of this earth. They belong to the surface. Trees do not grow downwards. They have roots, I know, but the tree itself comes up into the atmosphere. So we are surrounded, we are living in this atmosphere. Man, tree, and animal, and so on. That's why. And each one is radiating something to the other. And that's why you will have people, when we are cut off from nature, from animals and plants, you have flower vases and pots, flower pots, that you put on your balcony to be nearby to the, because when you have the town is only asphalt and concrete and glass and aluminium and in lampposts and high-rise buildings and automobiles, there is nothing living. So now needs, you cannot live in this atmosphere apart, because why do we have pet animals, cats and dogs? It is because we are created to live with these beings. We are not created to live in cement and asphalt. This is dreadful. And it is practical, I know, and whatever you want to say, but never, I mean, beautiful or rather sympathetic. And that's why people do come here, when I feel so happy to have come out here. I mean, to say, feel the nature as God created it, and I am sure I am receiving from this environment something which is good for one.
Satisfying you.
Bifan?
Something that satisfies you.
That is satisfying and doing me good, beneficent for one, definitely. Physically.
Yes, yes.
And when you have architectural forms, when they are respecting the laws of nature, they radiate. And I have a friend who was working on radiations of form, and he has been curing people with radiations. He said, for instance, that the coral resembles very much the constitution, the composition of the coral resembles the bronchs in the lung. So if one has got bronchitis, he can be cured if he could make his lungs to vibrate in unison with the coral, because the coral has the strength of the beginning, the force of the very beginning, before again deteriorating and degenerating by evolution. So he has managed to find some means of making the lungs of the sick fellow to vibrate in unison with the coral and heal and cured. And other things like that, you see. These are the things which we think about as, because we are not used to that. We are used to take medicine. You have to have, the body would need just one fraction of a milligram of, let us say, sodium or whatever it is. But we take the pill, or rather the glass full of things, and the body to take only 1 milligram, and I'm taking 20 grams, more than I need. And this will ruin the organism. But that's why they have the homeopathic people having, and they were making fun of the homeopathic treatment. One fellow asked, what do you mean by homeopathic medicine? He said, you take 1 gram, let us say, of sodium, you put it in a barrel of water and dissolve it, and take 1 gram of the liquid and put it in another barrel, 1 cubic meter, let us say, of water, and dissolve it. And then you will have the treatment, because you are the amount that would suit your body. So I mean to say that we absorb in infinitely small proportions, but we take more than what we need. It is like passing over, if you have the configuration of the surface of the earth, and you have to walk and climb up, and then but you go by the aerial trolley. You don't Well, the first time I like climbing, and the first time I have been into one of these, comment dit-on,
Tramway.
the
Tramway, they call it here.
the
Tramway.
تراموي مش تراموي.
the
Funicular.
funicular.
Yeah.
I felt very uncomfortable. I felt as if I had been a book and somebody's taking me and putting me on the shelf. I wanted to grab like all above the mountain and receive and give, but not to be put over like that, you know. So what? This is what the facilities always, every facility you pay a price because you deprive yourself of the effort that you do, because this life is coming out from this reactions that we have, what we want and what we do, and then what comes out, etc., etc. And we have to consider, I am trying now, as I've been telling my friends, this is a very complicated business. Never mind. You see, I wanted to find some means of proving, or rather giving man a standard of reference, scientific, with figures, to deal with what he is doing with the spirituality and quality of life and the basic nature of man, without, with figures, because we don't believe anymore in, you know, the three tributaries of knowledge: philosophy, faith, and science, analytical science. Of the like Sisyphus, like most of this modern architecture, where they put these low ceilings in all these hotels, modern hotels. A room, the hall, 300 meters long and 2 meters high, and this are the size of the space that you have to surround yourself with, has got so many factors. It is exactly, suppose that you are a sculptor and you are modeling, and you have your form that you have produced. This comes out from your inner self. So here you are modeling only space. So it has to be correlated to you, and it has to be harmonic, because space is delimited by surfaces. So that's what we call the architecture, not the walls, but the space that is within the walls. And the eye, physiologically speaking, doesn't see more than a point at a time, and you send the experience to the brain, and you make your image or line in the brain, like you hear music note after note, and you make the melody in your brain. So here now you have introduced harmonics, a rhythm. If the building, if the room, the space I'm surrounding myself with is harmonious, it will be musical. That's why I say we have to reintroduce, or introduce, not reintroduce, musicality into our town planning and our architecture by respecting the proportion, the musical harmonic proportions. You have in the Église abbatiale, the abbatial church of the Tournai in the south of France, is commanded all the dimensions by the musical proportions, harmonics. And I have one of my main students, he has had his doctorate degree from the University of Tokyo on the dimensions of the Arab house, the main room, the car we call. And he found out that in all of these cars, the dimensions are in harmony with phi and pi, the golden ratio or the pi. So you see this, when you have the feeling is harmonic. If you have rhythm, 1, 2, 3, you expect 4, 5, 6, all right, you are happy. If it is an acceleration, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all right. But if you have 1, 2, 3, you expect 4, but it doesn't come. And then you have 4, 5, 6, oh, bum, you all the time you're jetty. So this is the bad, or if you have, compare it with the, harmonics in music. If you have a string and you stop it in the beginning, in the middle. You have the octave. Every two waves of the small one meet with one wave of the long, and you have the octave. And if you have the fourth, the fifth, you have the perfect harmony. But if the second, it never meet the waves, and you it is horrible. If the eye could suffer like the ear, and if the eye, when it sees bad proportions or bad, ugly thing, becomes red or comes out, and you have tears. But unfortunately, this is doesn't take place. But it takes place inward, in us. And we have the tears within us. Yes, excuse me. Yes.
Dr. Fathy, I would like to answer this lady.
Yes.
In a more practical way, if I may, being an engineer myself. If you go and visit one of these homes which are open to see the new design and the accommodation and all of these things, so you go to the kitchen and you see, well, the architect made it very serviceable. You go to this big lounge, well, we can accommodate 100 people. But somewhere in that house, something automatically, it is not really formulated by an equation. You immediately say to yourself, oh, this is cozy. And I believe the word cozy is
yes.
an answer to the size. It must not be so big that you lose your personality, as Dr. Fathy says, and you don't want it so small that it becomes like a grave. And therefore, the size and the dimension of, in order to answer your question, is not put into an equation. It is what the eyes sees and what the body feels it requires. I don't know if I answered this in a practical way.
Yes, very good. The word cozy explained it.
So please don't be against the mechanical engineers.
No.
But if you, as a mechanical engineer, would design a home for someone, what proportions would you choose?
Well, you would have to go.
But tell me as a human being, maybe, not as a mechanical engineer.
You would have to go, and you would go to different rooms, and you'd say, well, this feels good to me. This doesn't feel good to me.
I already know what feels good to me. We have analyzed every motel room we have slept in. And some are good and some are not.
Well,
and I would like to know if I'm nuts or if there is really a foundation for my feelings.
Well, I think no equation. It's something that you see cozy for you might be, I think the word cozy fits the average human being. I mean,
yes.
I don't believe that anyone among us here, whether we are 50 or 30, that to a big hall we can call this cozy. And we can say that 1 meter by 1 meter is cozy. So I believe that the word cozy ranges between an accepted figure and a maximum and minimum.
Yeah.
And this is not too way high from your conception of what is cozy, or mine.
Have they come?
Okay,
No.
but have you noticed that people are very different?
They are looking
Some
for
people
this.
say this room is cozy. Someone else say, oh, it's oppressive. It's so
I hope they
small.
I hope so.
Yeah. But we are supposed to be all the same. We're supposed to have an organic basis. What is our true nature?
I think, as Dr. Fathy said, we're not cylinders and triangles. We're not all the same at all.
Then an architect cannot build for everyone.
Well,
People do not know what they want.
well, then hopefully you will get an architect with sensibilities.
who will make you go through the process of knowing what you want.
I remember one of my professors in the university
Actually I hadn't thought of it.
is telling me that there is three kind of clients.
Would also
One who knows what he
needs to
wants,
be
and you can work with him.
cluey and needs to be able to draw out of people what they want.
This very well.
Lovely, modern.
We come from old and traditional cultures, and our people do not change their ways easily. If we are going to present something new, it has to be very convincing. It has to be something that's really good.
I believe if the change would be something that is like a continuation of what they have, belonging to what they have, they will accept it readily. And they would find it as if it were a challenge. Like using Adobe for the wall and for the roof too. It is almost a challenge. But if you change for aluminum or steel, it would be a radical change and they would be opposed.
Well, the phenomenon that you spoke of earlier, of how traditional cultures will grab onto something that is ugly and bad. They're ashamed of poverty. They want to advance. They want modern things, and they take things that are not good.
But you can still an old person with
And this has happened in construction.
yeah.
What you said right now had an idea which occurred to me in a flash. What you rightly said, by changing traditional forms into modern forms, ugly, which are ugly, we have to have an inventory, a survey, an evaluation, scientific and quantitative, of the ugliness that with which we are replacing the beauty of the traditional in every field. In the weaving, like the weaving the lady showed us right now, in the tapestry, in the building, and the building materials, the adobe house, and the concrete. Because the concrete house, there is no modeling at all in the concrete house. And we can also consider the impact of what you do on the basic nature of man. If you take a man building in adobe, but using large bricks, he would be doing a certain effort, and every brick he is putting in position would have reacted to him because he has been measuring, using his spirit level, his plumb line, and knowing what is going to come, etc., etc. If you use, and he would be handling, let us say, 1,000 bricks to build a room. If you use a brick which is half the big one, he would use his brain and his feelings 2,000 times, not 1,000 times, because he would be using it. And what does he do? What he does with his own hands and its effect on him? I mean to say, if you take a man building, using his plumb line, as we said, the spirit level and the joining and the bonding, etc., etc., and compare him with a concrete layer, labor that goes into the concrete laying. You have a third-class carpenter nailing bolts just, and a third-class blacksmith bending rods, and a man pouring concrete. Compare this with a mason dressing the stone or handling the brick, and you will find an impact. You see, they say, this is saying in French, la déformation professionnelle, the professional deformation. It's not only the deformation, but I mean to say the formation, because the effect of mason, you find the mason when he goes back home in his family with his children, he's a dignified human being, and his children love him and respect him. But the concrete layer, he has nothing, he gained nothing that has any impact on his basic nature, and he would be no good at all. I was building once in the countryside, and we had a concrete layer who was, they were, I meant to say, I didn't like them at all. And once he had a row with the water bearer, And I was happy. I wanted the water bearer to beat this man. And when they had a row, I took $1. I said, this is for the winner. And because so as to make the water bearer to beat this. Unfortunately, they laughed and they didn't. Disappointed me.
Well, so the concrete man wasn't all.
You know, this concrete layer, the layman, we had a railway line and there was the passage à niveau, how you call it, in the railway where you have a gate. And there was a guard,
A switch.
keeping guard on the gate, you know, for the to close it for, and this man, he vexed the wife of the fellow, I mean, the guard of the railway passage, and he told him, I will beat you in the morning when I will be coming to the work, and when at noon when I go for lunch, and when I go home, and I will give you a hiding. And the man complained, and they went to the police station, and they caught him, and they wanted to put him in jail, you know. But I said to the officer, because we were pouring concrete, I was in need of him. So I told him, please leave him. When we shall have finished, I will send him to you. And after we have finished, this man came, he thought that I have authority on the police, and he asked me, would you kindly write me a letter to the officer to leave me? I mean to say, all right. And I wrote a letter to the police officer telling he has finished his work now, and please don't let him go away. Catch him and put him in jail. Oh, this is the effect of profession on man. You have the gardener. We have the gardeners in Egypt. They dress in a special way, and they have a special turban with gilt embroidery, and they talk in a certain way. The effect of the profession on man. Very respectful, and the carpenter, you would know. Like the doctors, you will have them, they have always very clean hands because they are washing and disinfecting their hands every minute, touching the you see, so this, what we do has an effect on us, psychological, and the psychological has effect on the physical. Because when you are fixing on an idea, the idea has an effect with the brain when it thinks of something, has effect on the muscles too. Like when if you are very angry, you frown, and your muscles are, I don't know, when you are happy, you are relaxed and you laugh and you don't know. So the ideas and feelings have effect on bodily. And also when you are concentrating on one idea, a sculptor. Only unfortunately, I don't know, I don't want to be unfair, because when a sculptor is a real sculptor, he would look like a sculptor, he would be a sculptor. But he's graduated from a school of fine arts and have been taught sculpture without feeling. He would be, we have so many bad sculptors.
You mean like a musician, he must have his hair go every which way and I don't know what, before we can say that he is a musician.
Absolutely. You know, the art is a gift. If one doesn't have it, he will never have it. But the technique can be taught in schools and universities. And that is where we have, as we have, very few artists amongst the architects. We have more of the technicians, and that's why we have the technical architecture. Architecture is not anymore, has any more, expressive qualities. It doesn't express anything. Because if you have, I call it T-square architecture, you have lines up and down a la Mies van der Rohe. What is there in it? Put this against a Hindu temple against Notre Dame de Paris, against any one of the cathedrals or the mosques or the buildings that the adobe, and choose and tell me which is beautiful and which is not beautiful. So this reintroduction of aesthetics, we have to do that. It is a duty to reintroduce aesthetics into our modern architecture, the human reference and spirituality and harmonics, because it will come automatically if you are harmonic, if you are dealing with, because in nature there is nothing which is not harmonic. God's creations are all fitting in the most wonderful manner, from the atom to the cell to the elephant to the mountain, always harmonic. Nothing is not harmonic. And as we said before, exposed, the mountain exposed to the rain, to the wind, it will always be, the shape would be always beautiful. Because the wind would blow out, would erode the soft and leaving the solid. And this has been sedimenting according to certain laws underwater, if it were a sedimentary stone, or if it were even the firestone, I mean to say, like granite or this and that, they have been, they have taken shape when they were melting and freezing and solidifying. The processes are all ruled, are governed by rules, by canons. You know, this reminds me, in Sinai, we have two mountains, the Mount Moses, from where Moses spoke to God, and the St. Catherine, where the body of St. Catherine was brought by the angels, they say, and I don't know, and you have a chapel on top of the mountain, and everybody who is ill, he can be healed if he visits this, gets near to this chapel. The view on top of the St. Catherine is not very beautiful, but on the Mount Moses, you would see the mountains as they were boiling and earth has frozen. It's fantastic, the most fantastic configuration, like out here in certain parts, like sculpture in the things. However, but when I visited St. Catherine, I met a monk, Father Moses, his name, and he showed me, he has made a road. He said, I have been working 40 years to make a road for people to go for the sanctuary, for the chapel there up on the hill, on the mountain, for healing people to St. Catherine. And was telling me about, and he was showing me in his room the drawings that he made for the roads, you know, the design. He was a road engineer. Naturally, the drawings didn't mean much, but to me, but to him, every line was showing something. He knew what he was doing. And he was about 75 about that time. And he said, I'm doing another road, and I'm making the object of my life is to continue this larger road so as to allow sick people to go by camels or donkeys or I don't know what. And he was admirable. And when he said that I made it the mission of my life to make this another road, it occurred to me to write a small story about him. I said there was an American millionaire and his son was ill. He went to all the doctors of the world and the hospitals of the world and this and that. It wasn't at all. And they told him about the miracle of St. Catherine. So he went to St. Catherine, and the child, the boy, was healed, cured. And but the boy loved the Father Moses. The boy was me, naturally. And they made friends. And he was showing him the designs, etc., etc. And then the father, for gratitude for the St. Catherine, he thought of making the road, large and so on. He brought in engineers from America, and with bulldozers, and I don't know what, they tried to make the road. And, and then the Father Moses, this was the mission of his life. So he went to his cell to die. And the boy was very angry. He said, now your father is going to do it. No, there's no work for me. I don't have to do anything. And he died. And the boy was very furious. And he chased his father, and the engineers and the bulldozers said, I will take the place of Father Moses, and he will do it by hand like he was doing. See, this is the adobe and the skyscrapers, my dear, and the concrete. This is, you know, this imagination which occurs to one when you meet with something like meeting out here with the adobe, and I'm meeting with this Father Moses, making the road. It was fantastic. I have his photos with rams, you know, and it's sweet, you know.
How do you find, I mean, from what you are saying, I can sense spirituality in everything you are saying, and harmonics to